So you may see that Diver Joe has entered the water right now. I'll do a little quick comms check with Diver Joe. Diver Joe, where's your favorite place to go scuba diving out in the big wide world here?
All right, can you hear me, Simon?
I can hear you now, Joe. You're loud and clear.
Perfect. My favorite place to go diving in the Great White World. Well, locally, there's a spot called Monastery Beach in Monterey. I really like. In the whole world, the best place I've gone, probably Cozumel Island in Mexico.
Sounds amazing. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to turn your volume up one notch, and then we'll get our program started.
Okay, you're off.
All right, everybody. It is 11:30, which means we will get our program started. So let's bring our volume level down just a little bit. Perfect. That way you're able to hear myself and Diver Joe because we have an amazing program for you today. So I want to say good morning. Welcome to the California Academy of Sciences. We are here today in San Francisco on the unceded homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, the original people of this beautiful peninsula. My name is Simon, and I'm going to be your presenter today for our PCR dive program and fish feeding show. We also have with us Diver Joe. Let's all give a warm welcome to Diver Joe today. We also have Diver Eric joining us in the water, and we have Dive Tender Ryan up above. So this is really a team effort brought to you by the California Academy of Sciences that we are putting on for you all together today. So Diver Joe, just out of curiosity, what is the water like in this habitat right now? What does it feel like?
It feels really good. It's about 80 degrees, so it kind of just feels like a warm bath.
Amazing. About 80 degrees in the water right now. Is anyone else kind of jealous or maybe wish that they were in the water right now? Because I know I wish I was in the water. We had some pretty cold days here recently, and nothing would warm me up quite like being in a nice sealed habitat just like this one back here. It's really amazing. But there's a reason why we have this habitat here at the Steinhardt Aquarium, and it has to do with the name, the Philippine Coral Reef. We have tried to model this habitat here after what we actually find in the Philippines in the world. So I'm curious, Diver Joe, what is it about the Philippines that makes it so spectacular? Why have we decided to model our habitat here after the Philippines?
Yeah, so the Philippine coral reef, much like a lot of the coral reefs in the world, has a really high level of biodiversity, which means there's a lot of different species of plants and animals. And so when we go there and we check it out, there's a lot of different things for us to see and study.
That's exactly right. So that big word of the day is biodiversity. And that means if you've ever taken a bio level class in high school or college, you might know that bio means life. And diversity in this context means a lot of different things. So biodiversity means that there are a lot of different living organisms that we know about in the Philippines. You can take a look up on the screen here, and you can see so many different fish, as well as a lot of different fish that we have here in the habitat as well. And the Philippines, if you're curious, the Philippine Coral Triangle is this little area of the world that you can see up on the map that is incredibly rich in this biodiversity. I'm wondering if anyone in our audience has a guess about how many species of fish do you think we currently know about that live in the Philippines? Does anyone have a guess? You want to raise your hand and be brave, give a guess. How many species of fish do you think we know about currently in the Philippines? Yeah, shout it out. Say that a little bit louder. 86? All right, so maybe 86 species of fish. We're going to bump that number a little bit up. Yeah, do we have a guess right here? We think 3 species of fish? That's a smaller number. Let's turn it over to Joe. Joe, how many species of fish do we know about in the Philippines?
That we know about, I think it's upwards of about 2 or 3,000.
That's exactly right. So we know that there are about 2 or 3,000 different species of fish in the Philippines right now. And guess what? Scientists are going there every year and discovering more. So that number is growing every year. Now, it'd be really cool if we could get all 2 to 3,000 species of fish in this habitat right here, but we can't. We can only bring a small selection of them, but there's still a significant amount. Does anyone have a guess? How many species of fish do you think are in this habitat behind me right now? Yeah, shout it out. 20? A good guess. Any other guesses that we have here? How many species of fish do we think are in this habitat? Yeah. 202, a very specific guess. I like it. How about you back there? 100. Let's go back to Joe again and ask, Joe, how many species of fish do we have in this habitat here at the Philippine Coral Reef?
As closest to that last guess is just about 80.
About 80 species of fish and around 700 to 800 individuals, which is really incredible, folks. But it's not just the fish that make the coral reef so important. There's another living thing that is really important for what we see behind us. Does anyone have a guess what it might be? Yeah, if you said coral, you would be exactly right. And coral, believe it or not, everybody, it's not a plant, it is not a rock, it is an animal like you and me. Joe, what kind of animals would coral be similar to in the ocean? What can we compare it to?
Oh yeah, so corals are actually really, really small, but if you zoomed in on them and looked at them, they look as a little like jellyfish or abalone.
Yeah, absolutely. If you zoom in on them, like we can see up here, they look a little bit like kind of tentacle creatures. You can even imitate a coral polyp if you hold your hand out, palm side up, and you stick your fingers up and you kind of wiggle them around like that. What you're making is an individual coral polyp, and the coral that we see behind us is made up of thousands and thousands and thousands of polyps that all live together in what is called a colony. Now, these corals, they are really cool because they come in a couple different forms. They come in the forms of hard corals, and they also come in the form of soft corals. And the hard corals are the ones that really build the reef with a strong backbone, and the soft corals are the ones that might flow in the ocean currents. I'm wondering, Diver Joe, if you could maybe point out a hard coral and a soft coral for us.
Yeah, so if you see behind me, let me turn around this way. The hard corals will be the ones that make these big, beautiful structures, like right up there. And then these soft corals are the ones you see kind of flowing with the waves of the water.
That's exactly right. And these corals, they also have some really cool colors. There's a reason why they have these colors, and it's because they have a symbiotic relationship with algae. See, while a lot of animals, they might get their food from the water column, these corals, they're able to have a special relationship with algae that is called zooxanthellae. And I'm wondering, Diver Joe, if you could tell us a little bit more about this special relationship that these corals have.
Yeah, absolutely. So the zooxanthellae, the algae that live in the coral, it's a symbiotic relationship they have with the coral. So the zooxanthellae get their energy from the sun, much like plants on land do. And the coral aren't predisposed to this kind of consumption. So the zooxanthellae get a lot of energy from the sun, but they don't need all the energy they create. So they give a lot of it to the coral in return for the coral letting them live in the structures here and in the polyps.
Exactly right. So it's a win-win relationship for both the algae and the coral. The algae gets a place to live within the coral structure and within the bodies of the coral. And in exchange, the coral gets a lot of the energy produced by the algae. The algae gets its energy from the sun, which is amazing. And it can turn some of that energy into sugars and materials that are then passed on to the coral, which can be used for its food sources. But guess what? Just like humans, just like other animals, corals can get stressed out a little bit. Diver Joe, what are the conditions that are causing these corals to get stressed out currently?
Yeah, so if you've probably heard, we got a climate change situation going on right now. So the Earth is warming, but the part of the Earth that's warming the most is actually the oceans, the water in the oceans. Now, when the water warms up, it changes the chemistry of it just a little bit, and the coral are really sensitive to these changes in temperature and chemistry. like that. So when the water warms up, it becomes a little more acidic. And what the coral do in response to this is they create this kind of chemical that's really, it tastes really bad to the zooxanthellae. It's kind of toxic. The zooxanthellae, they leave the coral. The coral kind of pushes them out, and in doing so, they lose their main source of food from the zooxanthellae.
Exactly right. And I know it's getting a little bit loud in here, so if we could maybe turn our volume down a little bit so we can hear Diver Joe a bit better. But in case you missed that, it's what is causing these corals to get stressed out is warming ocean temperatures. And the root cause of these ocean warming temperatures is basically the burning of fossil fuels and turning into carbon dioxide that is going into our atmosphere and trapping heat within our atmosphere and within our planet system. So when the oceans get a little bit too warm, the corals get stressed out and they end up kicking out, they end up kind of evicting the algae from their body. When they kick out the algae from their body, they end up losing one of their vital food sources. Diver Joe, can the coral survive any longer without the algae, or does it die right away? Do you have an answer to that?
So because they're losing their food source, essentially they just kind of starve. They will slowly die. And the other thing that happens is, like we talked about earlier, the zooxanthellae are the algae that give these coral the beautiful colors you see. So without the zooxanthellae, the coral would turn just a bleach white.
Got it. So it's really this burning of carbon dioxide that is causing this coral bleaching effect that we're hearing about all over the world right now. But that is why we here at the California Academy of Sciences, we have a Hope for Reefs initiative. And I'm wondering, Diver Joe, if you could tell us a little bit more about Hope for Reefs.
Yeah, sure. So our divers go out into the real Philippine coral reef, the one that looks just like this, the one we modeled this after. And what they're looking for is they're looking for coral that are doing better despite these changes in temperature of the water. And so they'll go and identify those particular coral, and they'll try to collect samples of some of them and bring them back here. And we were going to try to propagate them so we can make more of them. And when we make more of them, we can reintroduce them back into the water, and there will be a higher population of these more temperature-resistant coral.
So in case you missed that, what we are doing here at the California Academy of Sciences is we are going out and we are collecting coral polyps from their natural habitat and bringing them here to the California Academy of Sciences to grow them in labs to make them more resilient to warmer waters and to these harsher ocean climates. And when we do that, we actually can attach them to this really cool thing called a seeding unit, which allows these corals to grow onto this tetrapod and then be dropped at various places in the ocean where it can recolonize the ocean floor. Because coral, they only occupies about 1% of the sea floor, but it supports about 25% of all marine life, which is really incredible and goes to show just how important coral is to supporting our marine habitats. Now, there's other things that we can do as well. Who here has a bike that they like to ride? Anyone like to ride a bike here? I know I ride my bike to work. Anyone here ever take the bus or do carpooling? Maybe a couple raised hands. Yeah, excellent. So we can support community initiatives that are alternate methods of getting from point A to point B that don't involve burning fossil fuels or involve burning fewer fossil fuels than before, because that overall will help decrease the amount of carbon dioxide that we put into the atmosphere, and that overall will help mitigate these warming ocean temperatures. Now, I know that was a lot of information, so I figured before we feed the fish, we would get a little bit of Q&A time. So if anyone has a question they would like to ask Diver Joe at this time, you can raise your hand and I can call on you, and you can maybe have your question answered. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Yeah, I see a hand over there. Yeah, what's your question? Say that again. One more time. Oh, how many species of coral? Got it. Diver Joe, do you have any idea of the number of species of coral that we're trying to develop or grow right now?
That's a good question. You know, I don't think we have a target number of species. We're mostly just looking at any and all species we can get that we can grow and propagate.
Perfect. Yeah, we're looking for any and all species that are able to withstand these current ocean climates. Yeah, any other questions for the diver at this time? Yes, I see a hand back there. Let me call on you, my friend. Yeah, there are lots of jellyfish over in a tank not too far away. I'm wondering, Diver Joe, why don't we see any jellyfish in this habitat here?
Yeah, so there are jellyfish in most parts of the ocean. In this one in particular, it's just a little easier to care for these specific animals that are in here without a much bigger mix of different types of animals like jellyfish, fish, coral, all in one tank.
Exactly. Great question. Yep. A really good question. How are corals made? How do they get this really cool skeleton that they have? Do they build it themselves?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. They emit a chemical. It's oh, you're gonna have to correct me on this. Calcium carbonate. Yeah, that's it. And it's kind of like if you've ever seen a beehive. They just kind of create this shell-like chemical. It's a brittle structure, and it just grows and grows as the coral grow and as they reproduce.
All right, excellent. I think we maybe have time for one more question. Yes, right here, and then we're going to get into our fish feeding. Diver Joe, do you know of any sailfish that are in this habitat here? Do we have any sailfish?
Sailfish. I don't think we have any sailfish in this one.
We do not have sailfish in this habitat here, but that is a really good question. All right, my friends, you may see that these fish are getting pretty active. So I'm going to switch over to our dive deck camera. We'll be able to see our dive tender. They're waving to us, and they need our help to feed these fish. So what we're going to do is we're going to count down from 5 to 1. And when we get to 1, we need to say, feed those fish. Can you do it with me? Give me a thumbs up if you can do it. Awesome. All right, let's do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Feed those fish.
Oh. There you go.
Diver Joe, it seems like a lot of the larger fish are kind of taking command in terms of eating here. How do we make sure that all of these fish get the food that they need?
Yeah, so the big fish are definitely pushing their way to the top here, but it's okay because the food that we feed them, the big fish, they're kind of messy eaters, and so what they'll do is they'll get at these big chunks of food we're dropping in here, and they'll break it up, but they don't eat all of it. A lot of the smaller bits of food float down to kind of where I am, this level here, and if you see all these small fish down here, they're getting all the small bits that fall, and everyone's getting fed plenty.
And speaking of which, Joe, could you tell us real quick, what are these fish eating today?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. It's like protein pellets. It's if you look at it, it kind of looks like dog food, honestly. But we have it's an engineered mix of dry foods, dry pellets, and seaweed. We give them nori seaweed.
Exactly right. So if anyone here likes eating seaweed or nori, that is actually pretty similar to what these fish are getting for their meal right now. So we learned so much about the coral reefs. We learned about the coral and the fact that it's really the coral that makes up the importance of these coral reefs, that they support 25% of all life in the ocean, that they're currently being faced with threats of water that is getting warmer in their habitat. So I hope you all enjoyed the program. Let's give one more big wave to Diver Joe and Eric for joining us today. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, guys.
If you want to come up and give Joe a quick high five, you are more than welcome to do so. Other than that, hope you enjoy the rest of your day at the California Academy of Sciences. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.